Hello and welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today because we're about to peel back the layers of a truly fascinating and honestly pretty stark economic analysis. Today, we're diving deep into the hidden mechanisms of the rideshare industry. We're unpacking a comprehensive report that argues the modern gig economy isn't exactly the liberation it was originally marketed to be. If you've ever used a rideshare app, or if you're just kind of curious about how modern labor economics are evolving right now in the digital age, you are definitely going to want to pay close attention to this. Okay, so let's jump right into this by looking at the fundamental contrast laid out in our source material. Remember those early seductive marketing promises from companies like Uber? Be your own boss, set your own hours, and earn up to $90,000 a year just driving your own car. Sounds amazing, right? But here we are, a decade later, and that promise of freedom has crystallized into something a whole lot darker. The reality on the ground looks more like algorithmic servitude, characterized by poverty wages, constant surveillance, and rigid control. In fact, the researchers actually describe this ecosystem as a technological panopticon. Think of it like a system designed by algorithms optimized for one singular purpose, extracting the absolute maximum value from human labor while simultaneously externalizing all the risk onto the worker. It's this digital environment where the rules can change without any notice whatsoever, and your boss isn't even a human being, it's literally just an unfeeling line of code. So to understand how this actually operates, we have to look at the foundations. Layer 1, the contractor loophole. By classifying drivers as independent contractors rather than employees, these companies effectively strip away essential 20th century labor protections. We're talking about no minimum wage, no overtime pay, zero health insurance, no workers' compensation, no paid sick leave, and absolutely no right to unionize without facing antitrust liability. It essentially leaves drivers in a digital marketplace competing against one another in a relentless race to the bottom. Legal scholars actually have a specific term for this dynamic, a coercive employment relationship. And this brilliantly illustrates the tension right at the heart of the gig economy. The company maintains total control, they set the prices, they decide which rides you get to see, and they can fire or deactivate you at any moment with no due process. Yet somehow, they bear absolutely none of the legal or financial responsibilities of an actual employer. It's basically dependency, just wearing a mask of entrepreneurship. Let's see how this builds into the financial reality for drivers. Layer 2, the economic engine. A massive tactic driving this economic engine is the switch in bait pricing model. Here's how it works. An upfront estimated payout is offered to the driver, they accept it and complete the trip. But then, the fare is mysteriously adjusted downward, based on these totally opaque calculations of actual time and distance. What's happening is that machine learning models are constantly probing vast data sets of driver behavior, literally hunting for the absolute lowest acceptable pay that will still keep just enough drivers out there on the road. And the Economic Policy Institute puts a hard number on this reality, $11.77. According to their study, that is the actual average hourly compensation for an Uber driver, after deducting platform fees, vehicle expenses, and the cost of a modest benefits package. Now, let's be real. $11.77 is simply not a living wage in any American city, and it often falls significantly below local minimum wage laws. You see, the diabolical genius of this business model is the externalization of massive operational costs. While the platform pays for app maintenance, algorithms, lobbying, and some contingent insurance, the driver absorbs the cost of the car payment, their insurance, the fuel, the maintenance, the depreciation, tires, and even cleaning fees. It's wild. Every single mile driven is a mile of value extracted directly from the driver's own personal asset. To really drive that point home, pun intended, just consider the IRS standard mileage rate, which currently sits at 67 cents per mile. Now, this isn't just some generous tax loophole, right? It reflects the true, actual economic cost of operating a vehicle. Drivers absorb this 67-cent cost with every single mile they drive for the platform. It basically functions as a massive wealth transfer, where workers are essentially liquidating the equity in their vehicles just to generate immediate cash flow. Beyond the economics, we enter layer 3, the psychological trap. It turns out, rideshare companies have borrowed extensively from the psychology of casino slot machines. They utilize a concept called variable ratio reinforcement. Because a driver never knows exactly when a highly profitable ride is going to pop up or how much they'll actually earn from it, those unpredictable, intermittent rewards just keep them hooked. It creates this intense cognitive trap that keeps drivers working longer hours for way less money than any rational calculation would ever justify. And to strictly enforce this behavior, the apps lean hard into gamification. We're talking dopamine-triggering notification chimes, urgency-inducing colored heat maps, and artificial scarcity countdown timers that literally pressure drivers to accept rides without even having time to evaluate if they're profitable. They also use volume-based quest bonuses. The source text gives a great example of a quest where the actual marginal bonus breaks down to a negligible $1.14 per ride, yet it successfully nudges drivers to take totally unprofitable trips just to hit an arbitrary volume threshold. The app is constantly implying that low earnings are your own fault for not playing the game right. Which brilliantly illustrates our next point, the information asymmetry trap. Drivers are forced to operate in what the researchers call a deliberately manufactured fog of strategic ignorance. The platform hoards all the critical data. Drivers aren't told what the passenger is actually paying, and they often just don't have enough time or information to figure out if a drop-off destination is going to leave them stranded in an unprofitable area. This isn't an accident. It's a core feature designed specifically to prevent drivers from making economically rational decisions about their own labor. Shifting our focus from abstract algorithms to physical reality, we finally reach layer 4, the human cost. The reality on the ground is, frankly, pretty stark. Scholars have documented drivers sleeping in their cars between shifts because they can't afford rent and fuel. They're skipping meals just to keep their acceptance rates up. There are measurable, elevated rates of musculoskeletal and cardiovascular issues. And get this, astonishingly, assault rates for rideshare drivers are statistically higher than those for police officers and security guards. It tells us that this business model doesn't just exploit vulnerability, it actively depends on a constant, reproducible churn of desperate workers. So, where does all this leave us? Let's look at the reality and the future, paths to reform. Well, this model of extraction is a deliberate regulatory choice, which means, thankfully, it can be changed. We're already seeing worker-owned platforms pop up, like the Drivers Cooperative in New York, which aims to give workers a genuine voice in the process. There are also regulatory approaches being tested, like California's AB 5 law for worker reclassification and the European Union's Platform Work Directive for minimum compensation standards. The whole goal of these reforms is to finally internalize the true costs of the service and provide genuine, badly needed labor protections. And this brings us to a final, really provocative thought from the source material. It challenges us to look beyond the slick app on our phones and ask ourselves, is the seamless convenience of the digital age truly worth the hidden cost of algorithmic servitude? It's a profound question about the true price of the modern gig economy, and honestly, one that we can no longer afford to ignore. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this analysis today. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.